Hello everyone, it is I, the Witch of Paint. This week we are painting another Zodiac fairy, the 10th in our series, I believe. I suppose you already know exactly which Zodiac is going to be today's topic from the title, but I shall tell you anyway. It is Scorpio. Funnily enough, this Zodiac's name is one of the least different from the German word for it, Scorpion, so by far it is one of the easiest Zodiacs for me to recognize what it is. It rules from around October 24th until November 21st. As the name of his wonderful zodiac sign suggests, the creature associated with this constellation is a scorpion. And as such, my fairy was to be inspired by that animal, because what use would it be if I had a Scorpio fairy that didn't show any scorpion-like features? The way I chose to achieve this was to give it that iconic scorpion tail with the stinger at the end of it. However, the scorpion likeness should also be visible in the pose, at least a little bit, I thought. So I looked up a good enough reference and I practiced it once in my sketchbook and was happy with how that looked. So I went ahead and drew that pose for the actual piece, which is what you are seeing now. Looking through the Pinterest posts for this zodiac sign, I found a really cool looking flower, the chrysanthemum, that served as inspiration for his hairstyle. Though that was only like a loose inspiration for the hair. In the end, it just looks a little funny. Well, I kind of do like the hairstyle in the end, but it didn't quite get the look I wanted. Let's just leave it at that for the time being. At first I wanted him to have a skirt that's sort of made of flower petals, but then I decided against it and gave him some very poofy trousers instead. Because I think poofy trousers are the best trousers. On one of his hands I gave him the Scorpio glyph as a tattoo, something that I rarely give my characters. Perhaps I should do that more often, but I didn't know where else to put it, so I just decided he's going to have the glyph as his tattoo, which kind of makes sense to me. For the environment in the background, I chose shrubs, bushes and trees, as well as a glowing magical pond in front of him. And of course we cannot forget the ruling planet, or should I say dwarf planet, of this zodiac sign, which is Pluto. Our favourite little planet that is sadly no longer a planet because it's too small. But it's small and cute, and as such it does deserve some recognition. Now, shall we find out a little bit about Scorpio together? Brace yourselves everyone, this may get a little icky. It's Greek mythology, guys. What do we expect? One possible myth relating to Scorpio is that of Orion's death. However, there are so many different myths around Orion that only applies to some myths and not all of them. His myths are partly difficult to accurately summarize as there is no complete standardized text that has survived. So I suppose take this all with a grain of salt. Because I'm also not a professional historian who looks into myths, I'm just a girl in a room who likes Greek mythology. Anyway, Orion considered himself one of the best archers in existence, and somehow he managed to convince Artemis to let him hunt with her and her mother Leto. He boasted that he could kill every beast on Earth, but, well, Gaia didn't like that, because how dare he try to kill every beast on Earth? And so she sent a giant scorpion to kill Orion. In the fight between them, both of them died and became the constellations Scorpio and Orion, hence why the constellation Orion sets while the constellation of Scorpio rises, which is kind of very morbid. I guess we're just continuing the battle in the sky. They should really start settling the differences. It has been a good few thousand years at this point. Well, technically longer, since the stars were there before the myth, but anyway, let's not get too into that. There's a lot more to unpack about Orion's myth, but none of it is really Scorpio related. Perhaps one day I will make a separate video about him, but I'm not sure if I want to. I've read some of the stuff on Wikipedia, and now I'm no longer keen on it. Let's just say that. Be warned. Don't read it if you're not prepared for some icky Greek mythology stuff. Don't read the article if you're not prepared for that. I'm not responsible for anything that happens when you read it, okay? Okay. The other myth Scorpio could be related to is that of Phaethon. I don't know how to pronounce his name, I'm sorry. Who pressured his dad Helios into letting him drive the sun chariot. I'm sure some might have heard one or another version of his story. Essentially, he absolutely does not get it right. The horses bolt and they basically go off course and disaster strikes. And then Zeus kills Phaethon to protect the rest of the earth. But according to some versions, the Scorpion spooked the horses pulling the sun chariot and they bolted. In the section of the Phaethon article, a text of Ovid is quoted where Helios warns Phaethon that there are different zodiac beasts in the sky and he should be sure to avoid them. You know, avoid Taurus, the bull, steer clear of Sagittarius, the archer. Don't get too close to Leo and its jaws. And the princes of Scorpio would try to get him from one side while Cancer would get him from the other. It's just really corner him. I think that's such a neat little detail that that's what he has to deal with as a sun chariot driver. I'm not entirely sure how that is supposed to work exactly. I mean, I know that the Greeks knew, or at least had figured out, that the earth was round and therefore the sun went around on the other side and stuff like that. But I can't picture the sun chariot being in the same place as the constellations, even though technically they are always there. You see, it's a bit confusing for me. I'm not entirely sure I can wrap my head around what they're suggesting. I'm not entirely sure. Let's stop speculating anyway. So, even if in the end, Phaethon's downfall was his stubbornness and lack of control and practice, plus Zeus's lightning bolt, Scorpio is mentioned in Ovid's account at the very least as a possible threat to Phaethon as the inexperienced lad set on his doomed journey. You should never let anyone drive a sun chariot without a sun chariot license, guys. Remember that. As for the painting process itself, it was fairly simple. Wasn't that much work, technically speaking. The first layer was just some phthalo blue and indigo for the dark areas of the painting. Then another layer of indigo to add some shadows on the fairy and the bushes around it to make it clear that the pond is the light source within this painting. And I also added a very thick layer of indigo across the entire sky because I really, really wanted the sky to be dark to make the glowing pond illuminating the Scorpio fairy stand out more. Technically I should have done this in the end, but I was too impatient for that. I wanted it dark now. Usually, you would wait until the very end before applying a thick consistency over any area in the painting. But I thought if I was just careful enough, everything would be fine. The sky was huge and I would stay in the lines anyway, right? Wrong. I messed up a little on some occasions, namely on a bit of sky around Pluto, where I accidentally got a big drop of water. I also didn't bother fixing that, but that is fine, I think. It's not too distracting overall, I think, in the painting. Over the trees and bushes on the left, I think the thick layer of indigo made the painting process a little more difficult as it reactivated the paint underneath it really quickly, mixing and smearing the paint layer underneath with the one that I was trying to apply in order to get some colour in there. So that was a bit messy, trying to add those extra layers in order to make the background on the right seem less flat. A lot of things were learned, or rather relearned, within this painting process. Otherwise, everything went fine. Somehow I didn't reference the swatch card on my desk, even though it was there. And I could have taken it out and taken a look at it, referenced it to know what colours I was actually taking. For some of the colours in the palette, I already knew the names off by heart, but some I don't. And that's a bit unfortunate when I'm not looking at my swatch card to see A, what colours I want to use, and B, what the names of these colours are. But I am fairly certain that I was using Madder Lake Deep to add some more red tones to the fairy itself and some of its surroundings as well. Fairly sure fairly sure. I wasn't entirely sure what colours to use for the fairy itself. Eventually, though, I went for an orangish yellow for the shirt, red and green for his trousers, and lemon yellow over the wings. For some time, I considered giving him a skin tone, but then I decided that it was fine just the way that it looked. And then I really liked the idea of this fairy being super, super pale, like unnaturally pale, like literally white skin. An albino scorpion, you could say. Pluto was not all that hard to paint in either. All I had to do was to make sure that the heart shape on Pluto remained a heart shape. I mean, I did draw myself some guidelines in order to make sure that I wasn't going to mess this up horribly. I could have tried to do it without the outlines, but that day I was just feeling like outlining the entire background together with the fairy. Just thought it would be fun for this one. Also, can I just say that Pluto looks so cute with that little heart? It's like it's telling you you're loved. It's so wholesome and adorable. I want to give that planet a hug, but I'm pretty sure even as small as it is, my arms are not going to be long enough. Anyway, as I was saying, the planet was fairly simple to paint too. With some carmine, phthalo blue, indigo, and a random brown mix still left from some previous painting, I dotted around the colours in order to create Pluto's many craters. The trees I covered with a brown mix of burnt sienna and light red oxide, as well as some of the dark brown mix left on the palette from who knows what painting at this point. And with some help of the reactivated indigo, the trees turned a sort of nice dark brown colour, even though I had to then go back in and add more layers, rendering that underpainting there useless. I should have just done it in thinner layers, you know, I have to admit. Though the sky between my two trees isn't quite as dark as the rest of the sky, but I didn't realise until way after I was done with the painting, and I didn't feel like going back in to fix that. And I honestly don't think it needs to be fixed. Anyway, the hair was coloured using yellow, pink and purple to further connect it to the many colours that chrysanthemums can come in. As I mentioned, I'm not entirely sure I'm happy with this hairstyle, but I think it looks cool on the fairy and it kind of suits him, so I think I'm okay with it after all. Last but not least, I brought out my metallic watercolours, as well as my gold and silver inks. With the metallic watercolours, I added some shiny areas to the Scorpio fairy skin and also the wing dots. I'm not entirely sure what else to call the circles on the wings. Eyes? It sounds kind of wrong. The silver ink was used to colour in the stars using my glass dip pen. Somehow the silver ink flows better on the glass dip pen than the gold ink does, hence why when I switched to the gold ink in order to connect the stars, I also swapped the glass dip pen with a smaller brush, because that brush doesn't suddenly keep the ink from flowing and therefore you don't get any weird big blobs. While I'm talking about me connecting the stars for the constellation, I have a little question. Which end of a Scorpio constellation is supposed to be the head? I'm asking because I'm a little confused about the way that the constellation looks. A lot of the constellation representations that I found that basically had them on images somewhere on Pinterest, they had these fanned out stars at one end. Sometimes they were 3 stars, sometimes 4. I went with 3 because I thought the fan thing was pretty cool, but I can't imagine them being either head or tail of a scorpion. Perhaps it is the head, since the other part of a constellation goes in a curve, and scorpion tails are often curved when they prepare for a sting attack. If you know this constellation better than I do, feel free to comment an answer down below. I would really appreciate that, thank you. Back to me finishing this painting off. I splattered some stars around, both with gold ink and some metallic watercolours. I'm really mixing things up here a little bit. Anything that is shiny and can be splattered will be splattered, except for the silver ink, which I had already closed at that point. I didn't feel like opening again. Some of the less visible splatters are around the glowing pond. I was using my blue metallic colours for that. Just thought it might add a little to the magic of it all, but unless there's like light shining in the right angle, you can't see the dots. Anyways, that was it for this video. Let's take a look at the final result. I love this fairy. The pose was really fun, even if the hands caused me some problems, but it worked out just fine. It looks just as eerie as I wanted it to be, considering that the zodiac sign goes through Halloween. His hair is funky and the tail absolutely intimidating. Would not want this fairy crawling towards me in the middle of night. Not to mention Pluto. The planet is just so beautiful. I adore it. It is now my favourite planet because it isn't as complicated as some other ones, and it has high heart, which gives it bonus points for planets that I like to paint, but we'll see whenever I paint other planets, Well, I hope you have enjoyed this Zodiac Fairy video. One more this month and I will have caught up on all the Zodiac Fairies that I need to catch up on. The last one will come in January, since next month is December, meaning Christmas content. Like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Don't forget to check out my social media links down below. For the time being, I am the Witch of Paint, and I shall see you all next week. Bye! Well, look who's made it to the end of the video. I bet you are here for some fun little outtakes. Well, I've got a few for you to listen to while this video ends. Have fun! Then another layer of indigo. Apparently I'm also tired and not just sneezing and coughing. I also didn't bother fixing that, but the painting process... but that is fine, I think. Oh my goodness, I accidentally skipped a line. It literally was there. I could have taken it out probably and looked at it as I was taking colours. Oops, I just bumped into something.